Howdy, it's Ben and or Bookish Bear here, and today I decided to talk about comic books because I know that I've mentioned enjoying comic books and talked about a few, but haven't really talked a lot about them yet, and I thought that this would be kind of a good introduction to my comic reading, and I'm going to do my top 5 Marvel runs of all time. In honor, I'm wearing my Stan Lee shirt, good old Stan Lee. I feel like I should say as a disclaimer that most of these are going to be really recent books, mostly because I have been reading comics regularly for the past 10 years or so. So before that, my reading is really spotty. I've gone back and read some older stuff, but for the most part, within the last 10 years is really what I know and have kept up with. So a lot of these are going to be newer stuff, and I hope that that's okay. I read mostly Marvel stuff. I don't read very many DC books at all. At this point, I think the only DC books that I'm interested in are Doom Patrol by Gerard Way and the new Mr. Miracle book because Tom King is kind of awesome. But I don't really care about any of the big DC characters, and I really enjoy most of the Marvel characters. So I read a lot of Marvel stuff, and then a lot of Image stuff and a few random indie stuff that doesn't fit into those the big three, I guess we should call them now. I figured I would start with Marvel because that's kind of my go-to and what I read mostly. Number 5 on this list is going to be Generation X. So Generation X is a book from I believe the early 90s or mid 90s probably, and it's kind of the first teen book, like teen mutant book since New Mutants. So it's a bunch of these new teens. This is the first issue, which is all shiny. I actually have 2 copies of the first issue because I'm a huge Generation X fan. So the reason this is on my list and the reason that I'm a big Generation X fan is because it's the book that got me into comics at all. I had an uncle who read comic books, and he would give me comics, and I would read them occasionally as a kid, but I never read anything regularly. In 7th or 8th grade, I remember one of my friends had a Generation book. I think it was issue, I want to say 17 or 18, and I borrowed it, and I was really into it, and then I would just buy the new issue every month from Walmart, because Walmart was the only place in my small town that carried comics, really. I think there was a smaller comic book shop. So started reading around the 20 mark is when I started buying them regularly, and then went back and tried to get older issues. Sort of stopped reading and wasn't really into it, and then later got them all back from eBay or something. And so this series is just really great. I don't reread it as much as all the other series that I'm going to talk about, and that's kind of how I chose my top 5 is the ones that I read over and over and over. They're kind of my go-tos, and I've just read them countless times. I don't read this one as often because I don't have it in trade. I only have it in single issues, and it's really annoying to unpack issues from bags and boards and read them, so I don't read it as much. Although I might if I get it in trade sometime, which I should do. But this is the book that got me into comics. Chris Bacalo, I don't know if I say his name right, but he penciled it. And it's beautiful. Like, he's one of my favorite pencilers to this day. Anything he's drawing, I'm going to get. He was doing Doctor Strange for a minute with Jason Aaron, and that was just the best. Such a great marriage of concept and art because Doctor Strange is so weird and out there, and Chris Bacalo's art is just amazing. So that's the main reason that I really love this series, is because it got me into him. It's really well written as well. Just fun, like drama between the teens. Jubilee is part of the team, and she's kind of hates everybody because she is older and has been an X-Men, and now she's here with all these kids who are brand new, but kind of falls in love with one of them. And then there's M, who's just super stuck up, and everyone doesn't really like her. And it's just a really good group of people, and the team is really solid. The Emma Frost and Banshee stuff is really good. I really enjoy Emma Frost, that character, a lot. This is where she kind of got her start as being a good guy, teaching these kids and stuff. She does a lot of ruthless stuff throughout the series that is kind of cool. So it's just a really good book, and I really enjoy it. So Generation X definitely on this list, and will probably always be on So number 4 is going to be one that I really enjoy, but it's lower on the list because I haven't read it as much, and it's definitely not my favorite amongst these. And it's also the most recent of all the stuff that I'm going to talk about. And that's Bendis' run of Ultimate Spider-Man, which introduced Miles Morales. I am a huge Miles Morales fan. He's just awesome. I really love him as Spider-Man. I really love the idea that he's really concerned about this darkness inside of him that might take over, and he might become evil or bad or whatever, or do bad things. And sort of that's kind of where the story is now, and where the story has been going since the beginning. But he's just a really lovable character, and everyone, all of his friends and families are really lovable. His best friend and his mom and dad, and as just throughout his story, the characters seem to make sense. Like, they all do things that make sense and seem natural to how someone would react to what's going on, which I really enjoy in comics and all kinds of media. And I really like Miles, and I think they did really great stories. I really like all of his interactions with Peter Parker. The Spider-Man book is really cool, and this collects those as well. So these are really awesome additions. This is the first one. So it just collects the first 12 issues of Ultimate Spider-Man, and then the first 5 of Spider-Man, which is the crossover where he meets our Peter Parker. So really cool. I think there are a couple other of these Ultimate editions which just collect a bunch of stuff. So I need to get those as well. I just haven't yet. So yeah, Miles Morales, he's awesome. The next one I'm going to talk about is one that a run that I have read quite a few times, and I need to reread pretty soon because I don't really feel like I remember it very well anymore, which is Brian K. Vaughan's Runaways. So this first run, which is Brian K. Vaughan's run, and he wrote it for quite a while. I don't remember exactly how many issues, but it's just exceptional. He writes teenagers in a way that seems natural and not dated somehow, even reading it now. The show is out now on Hulu, and it's really, really good. It's a bit different, and the characters are a bit different than the characters in the book, so it took me a little while to get into it. But once I sort of just kind of let go of the idea of they need to be these characters, I found myself really, really enjoying the show as well. But these characters I love to death. So basically, the Runaways are these group of kids, and they find out that their parents are basically evil, and then they thwart their parents' evil plan, and then first they run away from their parents, hence the Runaways. Then they thwart their parents' evil plan, and just are kind of on their own after that, and go on many adventures and whatever. So it's really good. Lots of really cool plot, lots of great interaction between the kids. After Brian K. Vaughan's run, Joss Whedon took over and wrote for a while, and his run is really bad. After that, I forget the person who wrote the series after that, but it was okay. Rainbow Rowell is currently writing the series, and I think it's in issue 5 or 6. And that one has been really, really good. I'm really enjoying that so far. It's the most like this that any of them have ever been, I feel. Like, it feels a lot like Brian K. Vaughan's run. And it's really good, so I suggest you read it. Everything in between, I mean, if you're a completist and you want to know kind of what happens between, you can fill in the gap, but it's not really essential reading. But Brian K. Vaughan's run is definitely essential reading. It's all in trade now, and I think these are the smaller issues. I'm not sure why originally they printed them in the smaller paperbacks, but now I think they've released them in the typical trade paperback form. But get them from your library or something, but definitely read this if you're into comics at all, because it's just so good. The next one I'm going to talk about is number 2 on this list. Number 1 and 2 on this list can kind of be interchangeable depending on how I'm feeling, but these are the 2 runs that I read over and over the most often, and I've read so many times. Number 2 is The New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. So Bendis is kind of hit or miss for people. I feel like he's a little polarizing. You either love his stuff or you don't. I tend to really love everything he's done. This, I think, is his best work. This book and this team is just so good. It starts here in this story, or this arc breakout, and then goes up into Secret Invasion, which is one of my favorite crossovers. But so basically, I guess this all happens after Avengers disassembled, and then so there's not an Avengers team. There's a breakout at the prison that keeps all of the super villains, so they're all getting out, and just this random group of superheroes shows up to help on the raft, I believe is what it's called. And this random group of superheroes, Captain America, Luke Cage, Iron Man, Spider-Man. There's a group of people that weren't necessarily ever Avengers before. Oh, I remember Matt Murdock was there, Daredevil, but he's the only one that turns Cap down. So Cap goes to all the people who showed up, and he's like, hey, we need to get the Avengers back together, and ask them to be Avengers. And Matt Murdock, in order Daredevil, is the only one who's like, no, I'm too busy with my own life, and I can't be an Avenger, which is kind of cool. The Sentry shows up. So there's this weird Sentry story that's going on in there. They go through, and the lineup changes quite a bit. There's a really cool part where so Hawkeye comes back, Clint Barton, and then he's being Ronin, and so he's dressed like a ninja all the time. And then there's Echo, who's really cool, also kind of a ninja martial arts. So there's like ninja stuff, and with Elektra, which leads to Secret Invasion. Doctor Strange is a big part of this book, and his storyline is really interesting. So he keeps helping all these group of like ragtag people. Eventually, it leads. Oh, this is the run where Civil War happens. So this is the team that is against Tony Stark's team because they don't want to register. So they're like hiding out with Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange keeps doing all this kind of dark magic to protect this kind of ragtag group of heroes that he believes in, and that kind of leads him on a path that's interesting. It's just really good. It's really, really good. The issues leading up to Secret Invasion are really good. There's a scene where they, spoiler alert if you don't know anything about Secret Invasion or what that's about, there's an issue where, so they kill Elektra in Japan, and she dies and turns into a Skrull, and then everyone's freaking out because they don't know what this means exactly. They don't know who might or might not be a Skrull, which is a shape-shifting alien species. So there's a scene on the plane where the team is returning to New York, and everyone is silent, and Wolverine and Peter Parker is being Peter Parker, and is like, what's the deal? And Wolverine is like, no one trusts anyone because anybody could be a Skrull. And that scene is just one of my favorite scenes in comics. It's just really cool and really good, and the tension is really felt. It's just really, really good. So read New Avengers by Bendis, and I think that you will enjoy it. The other book that went alongside with New Avengers is Mighty Avengers. I don't know if this is the first time they started having two Avengers books, which is kind of common now that Marvel is doing two Avengers books. But the Mighty Avengers book, I didn't read a lot of. I read for crossover stuff, but I didn't really read. I wasn't super interested in it, but that's the team that's led by Tony Stark. And Miss Marvel is really big in that book. So if you're into Carol Danvers and want to know more about that, you can read the Mighty Avengers book, which is sort of the companion to this one. But New Avengers, as far as I'm concerned, is essential comic book reading, and I really love it. So number one, it's probably the book that got me into comics again. So about 10 years ago, I just decided that I sort of wanted to read comics again and get into comics. So I just started buying trades of stuff that was interesting to me. And this is one of the first ones I bought, and the first one that I read through all the trades and then got caught up with what was being currently released, and then had to go to a comic shop to get the new issues because I just couldn't wait. And I've read it just so many times. There are parts of it that make me laugh every time I read it. It's consistently funny, which is weird for a comic book, especially a superhero comic book. As far as I'm concerned, I don't laugh a lot when reading comic books. But anyways, it's Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday. So the thing about The thing about this run is it's excellent in every way possible. It's incredibly well written. The plots are really good. The team is great and kind of small, so it doesn't feel like a huge X-Men book where there are a million X-Men running around. It's got the elements of the school and them being at the school and the students and all that stuff as well, but it's not center stage. The art, John Cassaday is, again, one of my favorite pencilers. I'm going to buy anything that he's drawing because it's just amazing. Like, his drawings are just amazing. With New Avengers, the artists change a lot, and some of them I really like, and some of them I didn't like as much. So on that run, the art is a little inconsistent. For this run, Cassaday does it all, so it's all great. Like I said, it's just a really good X-Men comic. So if you're into X-Men and you haven't read this, I'm not really sure why you wouldn't have read this. I'm not sure why anyone who loves comics wouldn't have read this, because it's amazing, and it's consistently put on lists of great books for good reason. The art, like I said, is amazing, and the writing's really good. It really solidifies some of these characters and where they would go and what they are now, and just, I feel like it are just really pivotal moments for a lot of these characters. It solidifies Kitty Pryde as a badass. She's currently a badass in the newer series. She's running the Gold team in X-Men Gold, and before this, she was kind of a badass, but no one would ever have called her that, I don't think. But Josh uses her powers in really interesting ways, and she just does cool stuff and says cool stuff. She's really awesome. It kind of solidifies Emma as a good guy and as someone who is an X-Men, and her relationship with Scott is really good and interesting. It made me like Cyclops, who was a character that I was always kind of indifferent about, but after this, really enjoyed. There's a scene where he loses his powers. There's a lot going on, but he loses his powers and everything's gone to hell. He's shooting people, and he says, "I'm an X-Men, we don't shoot people," which is hilarious. So, yeah, read this because it's great. So those are my top 5 Marvel runs of all time.